Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Lasting Business Solutions podcast, Indy's launchpad to sustained business, success, growth, and leadership. I am your host, Renee Lucas, and I'm so excited to be joined by my husband and business partner, Travis Lucas. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I didn't even really have to trick you or trick you into coming.
He had to a little bit. So.
Our purpose of our podcast is just to make sure that we have some key takeaways for you to implement in your business, some things to learn, get your creative juices flowing a little bit, or maybe just to make you feel like you're not alone and that you have other people that can relate to you and you can relate to as well. So welcome and thank you so much for joining us for our very first episode. So Travis and I have a heating and air conditioning business, LCS Heating and Cooling. And in June of this year, we are celebrating the big 2-0. Can you believe we're old?
Yes.
We were talking about, so we have been dating since 1995, pre-cell phones.
Pre-cell phones, pre-everything.
Yeah. I feel like you had a pager though.
I did.
Yeah, and he was so cool, and it made him even more handsome because he had a pager. I would ask him, I'd be like, can I like call you 911 on your pager? He was like, no, you are not into that at all.
No.
So fast forward a little bit, we get married in 2001, and then we become business owners in 2005. And so only married for really a short time before we took this big leap that really at the time we didn't know was a big leap.
No. We just thought, why don't we try this?
Yeah, let's do it. We've always had this philosophy of like, we'll figure it out. Like, we'll do it. We'll figure it out. We can figure it out. Yeah.
But, the work ethic is there. If it doesn't work out, we just go work for somebody.
Yeah, totally. So I tell you what, I remember you like one day just being like, man, it'd be really cool to like own our own business. Where did that vision come from for you?
It really wasn't a vision.
No.
I just threw it out there. Sometimes people say stuff they do or don't mean, and that comment was a little 50-50.
So really, okay, 20 years later, he was like, yeah, I didn't really mean that.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah. Well, secret Renee didn't know.
I know. That's what I was like, I thought maybe there's something a little more behind that. You know, going forward a little bit, I guess when we think about the very beginning for us, right, what made you think that you had some business traits or something to make a business successful? Or I guess what got you to the place where you said, let's do this?
It wasn't any business traits. It was growing up. I've always had a job. My first job was picking pickles.
Oh, crushing cans.
Crushing cans.
Yeah.
That can crusher still down at my dad's house. Picking pickles, detasseling corn. I've always had a job because I always wanted money. So that was probably the driver behind opening up our own business because I knew I could work.
So did you think you'd make more money?
Oh, come on. Yeah. You're going to make tons of money. You're going to take time off. You're going to set your own schedule.
Yeah.
You don't have to work Fridays.
Oh my gosh. You know what? It's been 20 years and I'm still waiting on that one.
We've talked about that last year and yes, it still doesn't happen.
That's what I said. I was like, I want to get to a point where like, I can have lunch with my grandpa every Friday. I don't have to like have any specific thing. And I've yet to do that.
Yeah, so that was the vision that was the grandeur of opening up your own business.
That's what you hear.
Yep.
I mean, I had this thing, I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I could work from home. And I mean, now work from home is a thing. It's kind of a norm. But back in 2005, that was not normal to work from home. Yeah. So the dream of that. So isn't that crazy that we think back now and was like, that was kind of our vision, if you want to call it something. But
yeah, it was it was
a fairy tale.
Yeah.
It was a fairy tale vision.
Never came true.
The fairy tale vision really doesn't exist, and I feel like we learned that the really hard way over the course of 10 years, the first 10 years.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Travis, let's go back for a minute. Okay. What brought you to the point of, like, we're doing this? Like, I'm quitting my job, we're doing this.
Late 04, I think, early 05. I can't, I mean, it's been that long. Things were happening at the company I was at, and they were putting me in a position that I didn't want. And I went to my boss and I told him my concerns and they didn't listen. So I let it go a little bit because I'm a really reserved person.
Yeah.
And it finally pushed me to leave that place. And I went to one other place for about a month, maybe 2 months. didn't like how the owner was running the company, and rightfully, it's his decision.
Yeah, it's his business.
And that's when I said, you know what? I've got enough experience. I'm a hard worker. I can do my own thing. I'm one that does not like to change. If you look at my resume, I was at one place, no matter how bad it was, I would stay there.
This shows how old we are, because what did your starting pay start at as an installer?
At my first HVAC company?
At your very first HVAC?
$625, and I thought I was making big money.
$625.
Digging trenches and rock.
It was very hard labor work.
Absolutely hard labor work.
You weighed like 140 pounds.
I stayed 140 the whole time.
I know. Okay. So fast forward.
So the last job that I had, I didn't like how they were doing installs, and I can't come and tell an owner that you need to change what you're doing, because that's not my place. But I finally come to the conclusion that I can't work here. And I was like, at that point, I'm like, I've done this long enough. I know how to install. I've got a hard work ethic. I'm going to start my own company.
And for me, like, we decided this on a whim, I would say. Like, I remember I was sitting on the couch. Our Jack Russell Terrier was sitting next to me. You walked in the back sliding glass door, and you looked at me and you said, I just quit my job. And I was like, oh, okay. And you said, like, I think we'll try to start our own business. I don't even think we're alone in that. I think so many people, they get to a place in their life where maybe they are fed up or they're frustrated, and they feel like, I can do it different. I can do it better. I can do it, whatever way. And then they take it that way, and they do. Because you notice, like, when we were talking about how we started our business, there was nothing in there about any sort of vision, any sort of business plan, any sort of, financial plan. We didn't have any of that. We just had, like, I think we can do it better, and I'm really good at what I do, and I work really hard. I'm not afraid of long hours.
That was our business plan.
There you go,
I'm not afraid of long.
That's how you start a business.
That's how you do it. I'm not. The thing is I'm not afraid of hard work.
How far did hard work take you? And when we're talking hard work, we're talking, 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week. I mean,
80 hours a week sometimes. Honestly, I don't know how far it took me, because it all blended together. Probably the first 5 years, I thought I was accomplishing something.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I felt like it, because
Well, but you're the boss.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of people feel. Well, I'm the man. I'm the woman. It doesn't matter. I get to call the shots here.
Yeah. Now, the type of work that we were doing, we weren't doing the same type of work that we are right now. Right now, in our heating and air business, we have a specialty for residential homeowners, other small business owners. Back then, we were doing a lot of business for contractors or for people who were buying homes and flipping them. Yeah. So a lot of investors and different things like that. And so
bad business plan.
It was a bad business.
Yeah, it was.
But we didn't know it.
No, we didn't. We thought the money.
Paid the bills.
Yeah, I thought the money was there. I thought it was good money, but once again, we had no business experience. Therefore, we really didn't know that it was a good decision.
We grew up with that, like, if you can't afford it, you don't buy it sort of mentality. And so we didn't have a lot of bills to pay, which actually, like, you think that's a great thing, but it actually made our financial situation in the business even worse, because we never had any cash flow problems. So we didn't realize that we really weren't a successful business, right?
Because I can tell you right now, I never looked at numbers.
No. Well,
here's the job, and I got paid, and that was it.
Yes.
That's true. It was, here's the cost that was always underbid. So here's the check you get paid for.
My college career was around music. I'm a music therapist. That's what I went to school for, and that's what I was doing when we started the business. Yours was a technician and an installer, and so you didn't have any business experience. Nope. And then looking to it, kind of where we come from. I'm a student. I love academics. I love getting straight A's and all of those things. You loved recess.
Yeah.
And gym.
I truly did not like academics.
No. And you weren't necessarily successful in a classroom all the time, or how you would compare yourself to other kids, right?
And the upbringing, for that matter, college never talked about in my family.
Yeah. Yeah.
That never was.
I mean, you were a country boy. And so
I grew up in the country.
Yeah, you grew up in the country, and it's one
I
of
had
those,
corn and soybeans around me.
Yeah. So I don't even think, was a future past high school ever really discussed?
Nope. I saw my friends going Purdue, IU, Ball State, out of state, and I'm like, what am I doing? Am I a failure now before you leave high school?
Yeah. And I think going into, like, for a really long time, and we've worked on this, like personally in our marriage, as well as in the business, kind of that stigma that you have, and I've seen other kids have it too, where they think that they are a failure because they didn't get A's and B's in school, or they think I'll never become anything, or I'll never be able to run a business because I don't know numbers, I'm not smart enough. And
that was the path we were on when we opened up the business.
It was, but I think we limited ourselves because you would never have considered going back to school, but today you invest in yourself all the time in different types of education. Whether you want to call it that or not, you go to classes all the time now. You listen to podcasts, you listen to YouTube shorts, and you
I hated math.
You don't read.
I hated math. I hated math in school, but I have to use calculus now in work.
Yeah, you're a math genius, but you never would have labeled yourself in that way.
100%.
We're still like, as business owners and new business owners, we still had our heads wrapped around the fact that we're good at our trade.
And that was it.
Yeah.
You only had one lane to take.
Right. Yeah. Right. What would you say was the turning point for you when maybe you realized that it's going to take a little bit more than 80 hours a week or hard work?
We weren't, we never went anywhere on vacation. All we did, let's back up. I remember the day you told me you and your mom are going to leave town to go on vacation.
Yeah.
You're either going to go be with me or not. And I was like, I can't leave. So at that point, I'm like,
see ya.
Yeah.
And I remember that time, like, because I wanted to go somewhere. You wouldn't fly, you wouldn't leave work. And we really, truly didn't have anybody to cover work. Like, the business was you. It might as well have been Travis Heating and Air Conditioning.
There was no backup.
No, there was nobody. It was just you. And it was one of those where my mom and I went, and I remember making you take me to the airport. And I was like, you are going to watch me go. And I want you to feel like you're missing out on something. And thank goodness it worked, because you didn't let that happen. My mom and I still love to take mother-daughter trips.
Now, during early on, when we did first take the first vacation, we went to Florida. Mm-hmm. I wore a spot out in the sand.
Yeah.
Right at the water line, because I was constantly on the phone. I never got to enjoy vacation.
Yeah. You know, that's something that they don't tell you in like the fairy tale business plan. They don't tell you that, like, yeah, you might go on vacation, but you're going to work the entire time. You're going to be on the phone the entire time that you're on there. It's not real vacation, right? It's not.
And that was years. Yeah, we had years when we first started it and when I first took the vacation.
Well, and I think too, this is where the marriage part of it kind of comes into play, because I think if we weren't married, you wouldn't have ever taken those vacations in the first place. I think you were just trying to make me happy.
Yeah.
Happy wife, happy life.
Yep.
You're trying to make me happy, and so you agreed to go.
Knowing I really didn't want to go.
You didn't want to go, and you looked at it as more of a headache than anything, right? And so, and then I can pick up on that, and we'll talk about that in future episodes of the podcast, is working together with your spouse, because whether you like it or not, it's a web, and it's all intertwined together. And so you do have to learn how to balance all of that. I think there was two real big pivotal points for me. Mm-hmm. The first one, which was earlier on, was when I was starting to become a little bit more and more involved in the business.
Yep.
And I looked at some invoices because I felt like our bank account was low. And I was like, we haven't collected money for any of these installs that you did. And you were like, oh yeah, but she's like, I do a lot of work for her.
She's good for it.
She's good for it. Oh yeah. And it turns out she wasn't. Like, I called her and she was like, well, Travis is the last one to submit his invoices, so Travis is the last one to get paid. And you sided with that. And I was pissed. Like, I remember that because you were like, whoa, it's true.
But you know my disc profile.
I know. Well, I didn't.
You didn't really know at that time.
I was mad.
Yeah.
Right? I was mad about that. And so I think, too, like, that was a pivotal point. And, we ended up getting really screwed by that, because not only did she never pay us, she filed bankruptcy and she moved to Minnesota. And so and it was to the tune of $11,000, which at that time might as well have been $1 million.
Yeah, at least $1 million. It goes back to...
We're not a charity and we're not a bank.
Yes, and it goes back to there was no business plan. I had no business background.
No. What surprised you the most? And I think we can say invoicing, right? Having to deal with payment and everything else. But what surprised you the most of, like, things that you had to do as a business owner that you weren't expecting? Because you went into this thinking, I'm going to be great because I'm good at HVAC. Yeah,
so everything other than the work.
Okay.
I mean, truly, it was everything other than the work.
So like, I mean, but what does that entail? Like in our business, what does that entail?
Oh man, invoicing, collecting, going to the bank. I ran out of my 3 carbon copy invoice book. Now I got to go to Staples. Remember those?
Yeah, I do.
So,
I still have like
yeah, all of those things that they don't. They probably teach you in school if you took business class, but once again, didn't have a business class.
Yeah.
So those are the things you don't think about, and you go to a job, and you're chasing the money, and then if you get too busy, service call comes up. That goes to the back burner.
You have a servant's heart. And so you really lead by giving to others. And that is such a strength of yours, right? However, it was also kind of used against you on a business standpoint because that wasn't important to you. And at that time, you didn't see the value in that. It really affected what we could or couldn't do with the business because
we didn't have I didn't have time to do the rest. All I had time to do was to do the job, the task at hand, and move on to the next.
Answer the phone, get to the next one, right? And even talking about that, like answering the phone, scheduling, keeping track of where you're supposed to be when, like those are all things that, you know, making sure you have proper insurance and proper licensing, like those are all things that you don't necessarily think about in the excitement of starting a business.
Yes. All of a sudden we get years in and we're not gaining any ground.
Yeah. So I'll tell you the other pivotal point to me. And so now we're further into the business, you know, this is probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 years in. And we've had all these years of these long works and the bags under your eyes, I could put like popsicles in them. Like they were so big.
Yeah.
And I noticed it, but I don't know, I just let it go until I had somebody say to me, why do you make Travis work so much? He's going to die early. And literally it felt like I was being blamed, right, for you working as much as you did. And it's because we didn't really do anything. We didn't have any semblance of a life outside of work.
Yeah. We really didn't ever connect we never had a regular time to go out with friends.
No. And I'll say, like, I think because of that, like, still to this day, like we have a lot of acquaintances, we have a lot of people that we're friends with, but we don't have, like you can go to a restaurant and you can see a group of 12 friends hanging out at a table. We don't have that. And I think it's because we never took time for that in the first 10 years of our business. We were so absorbed in the business and in all of the calls and everything else that we never built those relationships here in Indy. Because you got to remember, we were only in Indy for 3 years before we started the business. Yeah. And so we didn't take the time, and we definitely, you know, you can see the repercussions of that later as we're, you know, in our mid 40s. There was also this pressure, like we were doing a lot of cycling at that time, road bike, mountain bike, different things like that. And the cycling
community. And I missed out on a lot of that.
You did. You missed out on a lot of rides. And I heard about it from people as we're like, where's Travis? Where's Travis? Where's Travis? And it's this, you get to this point as a business owner where it's like, everybody's mad at you. Everybody's mad at you, right?
You can't get to them fast enough. Why didn't you call me back?
Wait, why didn't you call me back? I left you a voicemail. Why didn't you get my voicemail? You were supposed to be here at whatever time. You were supposed to be here at dinner.
Do you remember, I don't know, 3 or 4, 5, 6 years in where we switched from Verizon to Sprint?
Oh my God. Shoot me now.
Remember how bad the service was?
Yes.
And the lady on the phone says, how in the world do you have such bad service? I remember the exact minutes she told me I talked. 8,000 minutes in one month.
8,000 minutes in 1 month.
8,000 minutes.
Yeah, that made it really hard for us to get out of that contract because they were like, there's no way you have bad service because that's how many minutes you talk.
I said, no, I'm on the phone that much.
Yeah. I think that's where two business owners can feel like they're on a little bit of a lone island because you have these points where like, everybody's mad at me. I can't make anybody happy. I can't do anything right, but I'm trying to, and I'm giving.
Yep.
And you get to a point where you're like, I have nothing left to give.
That was where you never see the light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. You never, because it was so bad that at one point I was crying in my van. Like legit.
I mean, for a grown man to admit that. Yeah. You see a lot of married couples that are business owners, they don't make it.
They don't make it. Yeah, it's hard work. So not only are you trying to run a business that you have no clue what you're doing, you take your marriage on top of that.
Yeah. And finances. Then you've got finances on top of it. We actually didn't realize that our business wasn't what I would term successful, right? Because we had slow growth every year, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Kind of just the natural growth that comes with doing good work and your name just kind of traveling around. So we had that slow growth each year. We hired our first installer. We hired our first service tech. And so you feel like you're on the right path and you're doing all the right things, right? We never had any cash flow issues, but we also never had a profit. Okay. And now we didn't realize that until several years later. But looking back on that, just think about if, in your everyday life, if you had just enough money to pay your bills and there's absolutely nothing left over, how long can you really sustain that and maintain a level of happiness? As we reflect back over those 10 years of business and our vision.
Vision.
I know. But as I think back about that, as we reflect back over those 10 years, I think one of the things that tripped us up in business that we didn't realize then was really a problem was the way we ran the business financially. And we ran it very similarly to the way we ran just our personal finances, right? So my dad is amazing at budgeting, and he taught me how to budget, and he taught me, if you don't have the money, you don't spend the money, and so we've always been big savers. You've been big savers. Oh, a little like romantic little message here. I'll never forget. You're like, oh my God, what do you say? I'll never forget. Like, you would save so much money. I was the first girlfriend that you ever had. Your mom told me that you bought a birthday gift. You bought something for.
They were shocked. My whole family was shocked.
I remember your mom was like, he's going to marry you because he bought you a birthday gift, because we both just come from those backgrounds. We're big savers. And so, approaching the business in that same way, not making the financial part of it a priority of sorts, it really affected us negatively because we didn't realize that we had a financial problem because we never had any cash flow issues.
We just never had any backup money for the rainy day. My take on it was, or my outlook was, hard work can outrun any problems. Hard work can mask any issues you got. Well, it doesn't. It truly doesn't. And so I look back on those first 10 years and it was hard.
I think that that's something that I would want to be a key takeaway. If, anyone that's listening today that is a new business owner or thinking about starting your business, is take it from us. And we did this for 10 years, thinking that hard work and long hours could outrun any problem or issue in the business. False. It is a lie. Will not happen. Will not work.
Worst move we could have done. But I thought that was the right way. I didn't have any experience to do the financial side.
And I would venture to say you were a little resistive. You were a little closed-minded.
Yeah, I was. I was. I was the problem.
I think that led us to what will actually be part 2 and the next episode of our podcast. But that really led us to what ended up being rock bottom for us. Like, we hit this point to where people were literally telling me, you're going to die early, right? I could see physically, like, your skin color even was like off a little bit. The bags under your eyes were crazy. You wouldn't get a haircut, even take time for a haircut. So your hair was insane. And it was just like, we didn't look like healthy 30-year-olds. I mean, now looking back at some pictures, it's like, what were we doing?
Working our way to rock bottom.
You know what? There's episode number 2, working our way to rock bottom.
No one ever has that.
Oh, no, nobody else ever.
No one ever hits rock bottom.
Yes. And the crazy thing is, rock bottom looks different for everybody. Like, it looked different for you. You told me once that, like, you punched your steering wheel, right? And that's, like, not smart. You could have broken your hand, right? Or, like, crying in your van. There are things that happen there. For me, it was very different. My rock bottom was very different than yours. But I think something that was good for us is we did kind of hit it at the same time. Which could be a good thing and a bad thing. For you and I, it was a good thing because I think that helped keep us on the same page of, like, something has to change here. Now, let me just add, on the outside, besides the fact that he looked like he was going to die early, everything looked okay. Everything looked okay. Like, at this time, we were doing about $1.8 million in revenue. We had 10 employees. There was 12 of us. We had vehicles that you could see on the road. We looked like we had it together. We had just purchased our building, and so we had a shop. We had somebody who was working with me in the office. And so on the outside, we looked okay.
But we were
slowly dying on the inside.
Yeah.
So I think that really leads us into what our next episode will be, which is really the second 10 years that leads us to where we are today, right?
Yeah.
So we are going to talk about what rock bottom looked like for both of us, and then the changes that we made, how we implemented those, how we even came to figure out what changes needed to be made, right? Because that's the first step. If you don't realize what's causing all the problems, how can you ever begin to fix it?
How do you get out of the hole?
Yeah. And we had help with that. We did not do that on our own.
No, you can't.
So no, you only know what you know, right? So join us next time as we talk a little bit about rock bottom, the journey over the 10 years, and how you get out. And it's not just like climbing out. We're going to explode at the top and show you where things are today. Each week, we have real conversations with other business leaders and entrepreneurs here in Indianapolis. And so whether you're navigating change, you're working on building a legacy, or maybe you're just starting out your small business, you're in the right place. So join us here on Lasting Business Solutions Podcast.